Ravens fans, I'm excited to be joined by Ravens Director of Player Personnel, Joe Hortiz. Joe, it feels good to be back here at the Combine this year in Indianapolis. So let's talk a little draft. When you look at this class, what stands out to you?
Well, I'd say the depth of the whole draft class. I think last year with the players coming back from COVID, being able to come back to college because of COVID, it added to the pool this year. So you just got a lot of deeper groups at each position of talent in the third day of the draft, where it kind of pushes some other guys up. But the board looks deeper and fuller, so it's definitely one of the fullest boards we've had. Strengths
and weaknesses. What do you see in terms of this draft? And do you think that this is a draft where the strengths match up with what you have as needs?
Yeah, I think when you look at our team, you don't want to say, hey, we have a need here or there. I think we need depth and we need players at all positions. But the way the draft is set up this year, I think every year you're going to have a deep group of wideouts every year now, the way college football is going. I just think that's going to happen. The offensive line looks good. Linebackers, edge guys, is pretty deep. And then certainly secondary, because college is throwing the ball more. The secondary, you're getting a deep secondary every year. So those positions definitely add depth to the draft. The quarterback position, I think the perception is maybe it's not as top heavy, but there's some good quarterbacks in the draft. They just may not go 1, 2, 3 overall. It just may be a little bit longer for the first one to come off the board. But then I think you'll see guys coming off in the early rounds.
So with the offensive line, it just seems like there's not necessarily a consensus. And that's probably the case for most positions right now before the Combine. There's probably more consensus after this week. But what do you think of the offensive tackle group? And if you guys go that direction in the first round, I mean, do you feel like there's options there where you could potentially get a day one starter?
Yeah, I think so. I think the offensive tackle group is good. I think, like you said, there's no consensus number one guy right now. And that's what the process is about. Figuring out who you want as your consensus number one at each position. A lot of answers that are still going to be found over the next couple months, so it'll be fun to find out.
So offensive lineman I want to ask you about specifically is Trevor Penning, because your good friend Daniel Jeremiah has talked about him, basically said if he's there at number 14, just makes too much sense. Yeah. What do you think of Penning?
Well, he's a big physical guy. He obviously went down to the Mobile and had a good week down there. When you just look at him, he's just broad, long, just big man, and so it's fun to watch him play. He played in the 1AA level, so he beat up on some guys and took it to guys. But when they played up against Iowa State, he played well. And so you can see him playing above his level of talent on the field. So he was a fun guy to watch. Very physical, very aggressive player on film.
So let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. So with the DBs, there's three guys I want to ask you about specifically. LSU's Derek Stingley, and I know he's not going to do the full workouts because he's coming back from health. Trent McDuffie from Washington, and then Sauce Gardner. I mean, Sauce seems probably, if we're picking one guy who's in our Twitter mentions from fans more than anybody else, it might be Sauce. Yeah. What do you think of those three guys? Kind of give me your impressions of them.
Well, I mean, they're all very talented players, and they're all being tagged as first-round players. A little bit different, each of them. Stingley is probably, they're all different sizes too. Like, Sauce is the tallest, Stingley's right in the middle, and Trent's a little bit short, but none of them are short.
Yeah.
All outside guys with ability to move in over the slot. Even as big as Sauce is, there's some times where he'll match up with a player, but typically he's more of your outside player. Stingley has shown the ability to play some nickel, as does Trent, or they played Trent outside most of the year, but quick-footed players, athletic. When you watch them, they can cover and they fit what we do.
And another position, I feel like this is maybe a sneaky need to some degree, is running back. And obviously you've got two great running backs in J.K. and Gus, but they just come back from the injury. So
right.
It's more of an availability question just as they get healthy. But when you look at the running back group, do you feel like there could be, in multiple years now, you've taken mid-round running backs.
Sure.
What do you think of that mid-round running back crop if you were to go that direction?
Well, it's funny because I sit here and tell you how the receiver board is getting deeper and deeper every year. DBs, because they throw the ball, they're still running backs every year. I mean, every year there's a running back, especially in the mid rounds, third, fourth, fifth round, that you say this guy would be a great get. And So yeah, that's not going to go away either, because teams are always going to run the ball, because you want to run the ball out when you get the lead. So there's some guys in the middle rounds. There's certainly some players that are going to be the top running backs in the draft, and they'll probably go in the second. You may have one sneak into the first round, like is kind of happening every once in a while now. But you don't have your top 10 running backs very often anymore. But there's going to be a couple guys that'll challenge to get into the first round. Definitely in the second, third, fourth rounds, I think you'll see a nice run on running backs.
Now, I know you're an Auburn guy, but Georgia has had some great defenses in recent years, of course, and this year they've got a bunch of guys in the defensive front who could be first-round picks. Some of them have been mocked, to the Ravens. Trayvon Walker, Nakobe Dean's another guy. What is your impression of the Bulldogs' defensive front?
Yeah, it's impressive.
As good as advertised?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a fun watch. It really is. It's an exhausting watch too, because they have so many players on their team. As a scout, you almost have to break it up and say, okay, I'm going to do the D line here, and then I'm going to look at the linebackers and the safeties, and then I'm going to look at the corners. So like it's a challenge watching their defense. There's a reason they won the national title this year. Kirby has done a great job down there building that team as a whole up, but his defense was pretty special this year, and a lot of guys that fly around to the football, play with a Raven mentality. They're hunting. You see 11 guys pursuing to the ball, and very, very few guys taking a play off, and so they've built a great thing there at Georgia, and something I think it'll continue going forward. But this year he's got a lot of guys in this draft class.
So, Joe, I started by saying it's just good to be back here and fun to have this conversation here in Indianapolis. We didn't get to do it last year because of COVID. How do you think having the combine again will affect your pre-draft process?
I think it allows us to spend more time with the players in the way we're used to doing it. Now, last year we took advantage of Zoom, and we'll still continue to do that. We can go to the pro days, and we'll see it at the pro days too. And we obviously got a lot out of going to pro days last year because we couldn't have the combine. But just the excitement of being here and seeing the players that kind of rise to the level of excitement is something that's always fun to see.
You say all that, but you just want the steak. You're just going to go to
Elmo's,
the steakhouse and get Elmo's and get a nice steak.
Yeah,
That's
I
really
will.
what it's about.
But it's harder now because we have the workouts at night, so there's no time to go to the steakhouse.
I trust you'll find time.
We'll work it in maybe in the next 30 minutes or so.
Exactly. We got to get out of here
and get it on the front end. Normally I go at the end of the combine. I take our young guys out who help us with all the player interviews and running around here. I take them to dinner, like a thank you dinner.
Yeah.
But because we're going to 11 o'clock every night with workouts, I can't do it this year. So maybe we'll head out early. Give them a preemptive thank you.
I like it. I like that. Well, Joe, thanks so much. It's good to be back.
Absolutely.